Generations at Work. Upon completion of this workshop, participants will be responsible to explore multiple generations, understand reverse mentoring, and to motivate a multi-generational workforce. This is a picture of my grandmother, and that's me when I was little. My paternal grandmother, she loved to show me everything in the world. I thought she had magic because she knew everybody and everything in Alva, Oklahoma. She volunteered at several places, but I remember the hospital the most. And she would show me how she would process the x-ray film without touching it. Just by putting the cassettes into the machine, it would take away the film, and then it would process it, and then it would come out the bottom. And it had to be done in the dark, which was, of course, magic. She would then do the finances and bills for their house and for Granddad's meat packing plant. She would work there, too, when needed, usually whenever the secretary was on vacation or whatever, but she'd fill in, and she did everything. Yes, my grandfather owned a meat packing plant. He would take me to the plant and see how to start with a cow from start to finish, which that's really gross in the beginning, but interesting toward the end. He even showed me his bypass surgery, how it was done by using a cow's heart. That must be why I like histology. That works, but my other granddad, he was a farmer, and I was shown how to irrigate the crops. I was driving at an extremely young age, feed the chickens, feeding the cows. It was counting the corn rows. My grandparents were the smartest people ever. They knew everything. They always had an answer, and they had stories that would blow my mind of things that I didn't even know of, let alone that they did it. I was in awe of their knowledge, and I dreamed of being that smart. I could ask them about anything, and they would respond. Of course, I'm an adult now, and I realize that most of my grandparents, their knowledge was based upon their experiences in their work in their lives. But I finally realized this once they're gone. So much knowledge was not shared, and so therefore so much knowledge was lost. When I entered the histology workforce in my mid-20s, I was labeled as the baby in the lab, and I hated it, as I was the only non-baby boomer in the lab of about 10 people. A lot of my ideas back then were told they wouldn't work, or it was a long shot. I was just a dreamer. True, from their experience, it was probably correct back then. But times and people in the business are changing now. Now, I still get called too young from time to time, but I really like that now. So, as the baby boomers are the majority of the histology workforce and are starting near retirement, the Gen Xers, Millennials, and now Gen Z are about to upset the balance, as you can see. As the baby boomers are the majority of the histology workforce and are starting their retirement, the Gen Xers, Millennials, and now Gen Z are about to upset the balance, as you can finally see. As the boomers led the histology manpower into technology and automation, the new generations are more adapt and ready. Just because each generation is different doesn't mean it's wrong. Each generation has the wealth of knowledge from experience and from education, and working together can make it into a top priority. Now, as millennials and some Gen Zs arrive in the workforce, they come with rather loosely defined cultural stereotypes, an inflated sense of entitlement. They are disinterested. They don't want to work. Aren't these just generalized stereotypes? These stereotypes ended up being myths. Millennials are actually quite resourceful and tech savvy, and Gen Zs are better multitaskers. Don't we remember all the generational stereotypes we were put through? The traditionalists were said that we can't change. Don't fix it. It isn't broken. Boomers were told, oh, you're just stirring up trouble. Long hair hippies. Gen X, they were just rebel slackers. And they were rockers and metals and a lot of flannel. Millennials, of course, they just think they're lazy. And Gen Z, oh, they just march to their own little drum. We can't get them to do anything. But those are just generational stereotypes. This is actually what was a proven characteristics. The traditionalists, Now they have company loyalty. The boomers were workaholics. Gen X were entrepreneurs and tech pioneers. The millennials, actually, a lot of them are young CEOs. And Gen Z, they are just so diverse. They go everywhere. For the first time in modern history, that there are 5 generations working side by side. However, the generational divide is stated by Dr. Constance Patterson. A lack of understanding across generations can have detrimental effects on communication and working relationships and undermine effective service. Are we really that different? So let's explore the 5 generations. Keep in mind, all generational year ranges vary from study to study, so it's a give and take. So we'll start with the traditionalists. They were born before 1943, and there was roughly about 50 million of them. Now, this is my grandparents' era, but there are still some traditionalists working to this day. We just had a pathologist's 90th birthday this year. I mean, he comes to work every day, loves his job. Traditionalists are good at conserving and saving after recovering from the financial post-war era. Their mantra was pretty much, an honest day's pay for an honest day's work. They were very loyal, very respectful, high respect for authorities, cautious, rule-following, very disciplined, and of course the workplace loyalty. But the reason why they did a lot of this is because they went through the Great Depression and World War II. And in World War II, not only was it even the soldiers, the people that were lost, or even those who stayed behind and had to go through the rations, victory gardens, and losing friends and family. They also moved from the city to the suburbs, and vaccines were introduced to stop disease, polio, measles, diphtheria, whooping cough, etc. Now, a lot of these vaccines, they were not done by needle. They would scrape the skin and pour it in. So a lot of these traditionalists, they have scars from these vaccines in the early stages. So the next generation is our baby boomers. And roughly the age range, they vary, but from 1943 to 1960, and they have roughly 76 million. Now, they had a great population increase when the soldiers came back from the war, and therefore all the babies came out. The baby boomers, their work was a higher priority over personal life. They generally would distrust authority, but are more optimistic than the prior generation. Now, the baby boomers, they thought it was self-focused, or they would call it a me generation. I didn't understand that concept in the beginning, but after some research, I found that it wasn't just being selfish. It was just that they were more work-centric. They were more working on their careers. A lot of the men would go and work, and that was basically all that they would do. And they would work a lot. And it was very good at that time. So they were ambitious, loyal, work-centric, but also rather cynical. And we know some of those who are forever young, riding in their cars and still looking like they're 20. But they don't require the constant feedback and have basically all is well unless you say something mindset. But they had to go through Vietnam, which that wasn't a real war. That was just a conflict, they would call it. But we had people land on the moon, but we went through civil rights, women's rights, but the baby boomers were very experimental. They were innovators, hardworking, but when technology increased, they ended up with personal computers for the first time. Next generation is Gen X. Yes, that is my generation. Roughly born between 1960 to 1980. And it was a population decline down to 55 million. Now, Gen X is known as America's neglected middle child, like their namesake suggests. Gen Xers are less distinct than other generations, and they know it. But they are known for creating the work-life balance concept as they watch their parents get burnt out. They're quite self-reliant and middle child syndrome, which once again, as the baby boomers had 76 million and the millennials have 80 million. So their generations were bigger and they get more press and more attention, where the Gen Xers feel they tend to be overlooked. In Gen X, they had higher divorce rates. So therefore, we would have two incomes, so mom's back to work. So then we would end up with latchkey kids, which ended up feeling like they were being survivalist because we were making dinner at an early age and doing chores, and because we became young adults fast. There was no training necessary. We were just thrown in the mix, can learn and adapt quickly, prefer to work independently. They value personal and professional lives equally. We're not as work-centric because we like to still have our personal life as well. So therefore, we're not as loyal to the company, but we went through the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Cold War, which that was a big step. And we also had the Gulf War, the free agents in sports starting, but that also started into the work area. We're becoming a new thing. The Gen Xers were tech pioneers, the web startups. This was high starting technology. Internet, MTV, unfortunately, the AIDS epidemic. But with all the technology, we ended up with mobile phones. Now, true, they started with a big box with a corded it to the base, but now we have them so small. But that was mobile phone. Our next generation are the Millennials, and this is from 1980 to 2000. Now, the Millennials had a population boost up to 80 million. Now, the Millennials are global-centric. Now, so there's been an increase in internet, so they can see across the world at the moment, and global terrorism, because they know what happens across the world instantaneously. But they have become the most resilient, the most educated, and prefer being in groups. This is the fastest growing segment of today's workforce. Now, they're a little different, but so they may be selling their skills to a highest bidder, so they're not as loyal as the boomers, but that's just a different way to do it. They want meaningful work. That means they want proper training, they want to be mentoring, they want feedback, and to feel the culture. Not just being thrown in or just being happy to just have a job. They're very self-expressive and group-oriented. But they had to go through the 9/11 attack. Now, this was on our American soil, which this is the first. And so that gives you a whole different mindset. The 9/11 attacks was bringing more communities together. So, and also then volunteerism is on the rise. Now, there was also the economic meltdown of 2008. If they didn't find jobs, they moved back home and worked part-time, maybe while applying to grad school, hence the most educated. If they were lucky, they worked at unpaid internships where the only currency was resume padding and a good reference. Okay, Gen X. When I turned 16, I got a job. I applied to only one place. I got a job, and it worked. My goddaughter, millennial, when she turned 16, it took her 2 years just to get a part-time job. A lot because of the economic meltdown. Adults were laid off. They were scraping by to get any job that they could do just to keep their house and food on the table. And so therefore, then they didn't have openings for the younger generation. But the millennials, they also have a problem with immediacy. It means they want it immediate. That's due to the internet. They want answers fast. So since, because they Google everything, they have Facebook, they can talk to, you have your family across the nation and you can talk to them all, automatically. So they want it immediately. Our last generation, now this is Generation Z, which this starts from, and this is roughly 2000 to 2020. Now, mind you, we already have 80 million and counting, because We still have 2 years left. Now, a lot of times, the reason why we have a lot of Gen Z, the Gen Xers waited till they were later in life to start a family, including myself. I had my son when I was 35, so he's a Gen Z. And then my millennial, she's having her baby this year. So that's why we're getting both Gen Xers and millennials are population explosion. For Gen, they like to be individualism. Now, they have more school than work, meaning they focus more on school. They have a more stressful school because of all of the activities that they don't even have enough time for a part-time job. And they're volunteering, and they want to be good for when they move on to college or tech. But they have grown to be global and financially conservatives because they have seen what is happening to the world, what has been happening to the financial aspect. And so they're becoming more conservative to save the earth. This generation is larger than baby boomers and millennials, which I have already spoke of, but 53% actually want more face-to-face interaction. Now, the millennials, they were more focused on the technology, and so they always had their face down on their iPhone or their iPads and constant technology. But Gen Z want more face-to-face interaction. 55% want to have actually been said that they want to be entrepreneurs, not just employees. They're great again on the volunteerism. They're very social conscious and cautious, but they are the most diverse. They are technology advanced. I mean, they were pretty much born with a cell phone, and they know how to work the app. A 3-year-old knows how to work the apps better than me. But they're very optimistic. And the drawback is that they do have high expectations. And the reason why is very simple. They have been raised on the internet and to where they can see everything, whether it's looking into a company, whether it's looking across the world. They have found out who has the best of the best. They know where to go and where not to go. There's reviews for hotels. There's reviews for everything. And they actually use these reviews. And so therefore they know what has the best quality. So they have the highest expectations because they know who can do the best quality. But like I said, they're great on the apps. So they're big on social games and tablet devices, which actually some of them, you even talk about a laptop and they still look at you a little weird because that's a little too old. So, and the technology is so advanced that it moves so fast. It shows you a little bit of everything. The core values, the work ethics, the communication styles, the feedback, and the stereotypes from each generation. Keep in mind, the generational years they vary. The traditionals, which is the silent generation, they were more into conformity, and baby boomers wanted to focus on work. Gen X is more independence, and Generation Y is more, they're looking more for goals, so they want meaningful. And Gen Z is actually wanting the best quality. So everybody has gone through different pitfalls, wars, financial issues, and this is how it creates their thought process and how this can connect. Wow. Everybody was put through completely different world situations. Gen Z is global as they can see the world is in the internet, but traditionalists saw the world via World War II. This is extremely different. Times always change. The technology has moved on using warp speed. This is the generational composition of the generation's percentages. Gen X is second to last percentage, which this is under the boomers. But this is, of course, because we have a low population. Now, Gen X has been waiting for boomers to retire, but some are refusing to do so. But now millennials start to take over, even CEOs at a young age. Gen Z has already started working. Oh boy. When thinking of how smart my grandmother was, I'm sure it was a lot of experience that my grandmother had lived. But this is something that is special. Experience is not for sale, and those experiences cannot be duplicated. As each generation evolves, certain things become extinct as no longer needed. Some technology becomes extinct just as soon as the newest models come out. Younger people are born with technology, and they use it as easy as breathing. Older people, they know how to get it done by hand without even blinking. How does everyone feel? Traditionalists, some of them, they don't even want to think about technology. It's too hard. Boomers sometimes are afraid of feeling like they're being phased out or that they're not needed anymore. Gen Xers feel overlooked and actually kind of stuck in between because they feel too young for the boomers and too old for millennials. Millennials feel treated dumb because it's all education and no experience. And Gen Zs are just treated as babies that they know nothing. Well, this is a generational glimpse. This is just a majority of generations that are working right now, so it's basically your baby boomers, the Gen X, and your millennials. I like this as it shows that the baby boomers are the hardest working. Gen X are the best to communicate because they can do face-to-face and technology. And of course, millennials are the best at technology. Everybody has strengths, and if they are combined, but they are the most productive way possible. I found this short video, and it spoke volumes. By doing so, use reverse mentoring. It was first popularized by former GE chairman Jack Welch, and it's been around for about a decade or so. But it seems to be picking up with the increasingly fast pace of technology in business. It's a situation where older employees realize that by the time you're in your 40s and 50s, you're not in touch with the future the same way the young 20-somethings. They come with fresh eyes, open minds, and instant links to the technology of our future, but have no experience in other ways. Reverse mentoring refers to an initiative in which older employees are paired with and mentored by younger employees on topics such as technology, social media, and current trends. Younger employees are mentored by older employees on business terminology, industry practices, and company culture. For a reverse mentoring relationship to work, several factors must be in place. Each party needs to be very clear on their expectations. Each party must be fully committed to the mentoring relationship and agree upon the rules that will be followed. In a reverse mentoring relationship, both parties act in the capacity of a mentor as well as a mentee, so they must both both genuinely want to learn from and share with the other. Reverse mentoring requires the trust of each party. The goal is to push one another outside of their comfort zone and try new ways of thinking, working, and being. And transparency. In two ways. Transparency number one. Both parties must be open with their feelings and with what they're thinking. With this cartoon, the older woman is saying, is she even listening to me? Where the young one is saying, man, she is so amazing. I have to tweet that last bit so that all my friends can hear it. But right here, you can see right in the middle that they're just not communicating. They're not sharing their thoughts. And therefore, that's how people can have miscommunications and hurt feelings that shouldn't even be there and not sharing. Transparency number two. They must be able, Adrien Alberts said it best, talk about it. Don't pretend it's not happening. When you have the conversation and people come to some understanding, people find a way to do productive work together. Transparency two. They must be able to overcome differences in communication styles. And since different generations communicate differently, but be willing to see situations from different angles, just like this cartoon suggests. When it requires individuals to fit in, organizations think of themselves as being harmoniously diverse. But they are actually paying a premium in stagnant thinking, lost creativity, and an absence of diverse opinion. So you really need to open to seeing situations from different angles. There are benefits of reverse mentoring programs. It closes the knowledge gap, not just generational gap. It's the knowledge gap for both parties. Sharing the knowledge both ways. It empowers emerging and established leaders, brings different employee generations closer together. As Alexa Scordato, a reverse mentoring devotee, states, we need to stop thinking about it as an us versus them conversation. It is a two-way street. The good news is that reverse or reciprocal mentoring can take place within existing company mentoring programs. It doesn't, and really, calm down, it does not require a lot in the way of new processes, just the ability to match up employees of different generations and then encourage each team to meet regularly, to exchange ideas and challenge each other, which that can be done in just a casual conversation. Mentoring relationships shouldn't be restricted to people of the same gender or who have similar backgrounds, because there's much we can learn from people who are different from ourselves. So this is also culturally as well. This is the today's generation gap by the numbers. Now, both sides look like they're doing the exact same, just walking and talking and sharing today's events, yet generations apart. But just remember that strength lies in differences, not in similarities. So we need to change from this. Yes, I heard this one a lot back in my day. But we need to change to this. Wherever there are beginners and experts, old and young, there is some kind of learning going on, some kind of teaching. We are all pupils and we are all teachers. Now, change is scary, but not as scary as staying the same forever. Really? Who remembers when an ashtray was on top of the microtome? Because you could still smoke while you work in the hospital back then. Who remembered the pathologist? Actually, I worked with a pathologist who would eat his sandwich while doing an autopsy. Who thought gloves actually slowed down the grossing time period? Who pipetted by mouth? And of course, I remember doing the PAS with digestion, using my own spit, standing in the corner with a cup, trying to work up enough so I can stain my slides. But things changed. So now there's fake spit, and change is good. Yes, things changed, but they should be embraced. Sliced bread, indoor plumbing, sewers. Yes, that was back then. But growth is change. Even in histology, we have printed cassettes, printed slides, automation. So we have automation of H&E stainers, specials, the IHC, ISH, the embedders. We even have automated embedders. We have xylene-free processing. We have cover slipping, and it just keeps growing. The world is changing and embracing all generations. So I will now show you. Brainstore, a company in Biel, Switzerland, it works on products and ad campaigns for companies like Nestle and the Swiss Railway, and they call themselves an idea factory. They hire teenagers to solve problems. That's right. They hire teenagers to solve problems. The co-founder, Marcus Metler, says that to succeed, Brainstorm needs crazy ideas. He believes that teens don't let their thinking get in the way. We blend the professionalism of experts with the unbridled enthusiasm of kids. By mixing the ideas of experts and novices, of young and old, we increase the diversity of solutions that can be generated for their clients. This can help in histology as well. There's even a Take Parents to Work Day now. In '93, that's when Gloria Steinem founded the Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day. In 1999, Pet Sitters International created Take Your Dog to Work Day. And now the millennials, they take their parents to work day. And this is because the millennials tend to rely on support and advice from their parents as they feel more connected with their parents as they have in this generation. So now they have Take Your Parents to Work Day, which started in 2013 with LinkedIn. And the parents really enjoy this because they spend so much time with the child, and then when they go off to work, it feels like a huge separation. But this way, they can come, they can see what they do, they understand, and it helps in their communication. Another new changing thing are standing desks. Now, and this still could be used in histology. The adjustable one is done best. But this can help with posture problems and hip problems. And this is just a whole new way to look at it. Workplace flexibility. Now, this is more on the rise with the millennials and the Gen Zs, but they use downtime effectively and just done differently. They don't really use no more uniform 9 to 5 hours, but because they want a balance of work, life, and taking care of their health. They want to, if there's some downtime, they'll run to the gym, or they'll run their errands, or if they work better in the afternoon than the morning, they just like to use it effectively. Histology, however, it is not a completely open office facility like Google or LinkedIn. I know. It is a lab, and certain rules and requirements like CLIA and CAP have to abide by. But we also know that they change a lot of amendments every year. Change is not inevitable. Change is a guarantee. Certain things can open up the flexibility, and it might even increase the efficiency. Who knows? Flexibility may become the standard. Over 60% of the histology workforce is of baby boomers, and some have already started to retire. This workforce is already showing a workforce shortage, and this is just the beginning of the decline. Millennials want to work and are extremely eager to learn. They soak up the knowledge like a sponge. But don't let go of your boomers either. They may be the last generation in the workforce with the ability to singularly focus on the big issues, as they can do big picture, mission-driven, focused problem solving when you need it. Just remember, reverse mentoring helps close the knowledge gap. And you can see that both parties are needed in order to do so. Don't think as being a traditionalist, being an antique, and don't feel like you're a boomer being phased out. Don't think of as a Gen Xer saying I've been overlooked, or as a millennial not being trusted because didn't know enough experience. And of course, Gen Z, well, I'm just a baby. All of these thoughts are not true. Each generation has knowledge and education. Not sharing this knowledge stops the growth. So what I use, I have 5 daily tips that can help. I like to make it, number one, make it awareness, be aware and appreciate the differences of the generations. Respect them for their experience and respect them for their education. Find a common ground that you can talk about to even get it started. Communicate openly. Just like that prior cartoon of the older lady and the younger kid. You have to openly communicate and let each other know what you're thinking and feeling. And this, by opening communication, you can clear so much up. And mine is my favorite, but ask them about it. Don't tell them, whether it's a traditionalist or a baby boomer or even a Gen Z. I mean, nobody wants to be told what to do. It's just more of respect, but also it helps open the knowledge to be shared. So by using these 5 daily tips, these can help you to go and do more histology together. I hope this has been helpful for everybody. I have references if necessary. And if you have any questions, I will also have, on the first page is my email address, and you can contact me if you have any questions or anything like that.